My days followed a simple rhythm, a quiet song of work and family. When my husband Min was away for his job, the house felt a little bigger, a little emptier. He traveled often, his work taking him to distant cities for weeks at a time. I would wake early, long before the sun touched the windows, to prepare for my day at the small accounting office where I worked. The children, our sweet Anne and little Bin, were my world. I would get them ready for school, their laughter filling the morning air like the chirping of sparrows. After work, we would do homework, share stories, and I would cook dinner, often a simple soup or some rice with vegetables. The evenings were for us, a time of quiet togetherness before bedtime stories and soft goodnight kisses. I never felt lonely, not really. I felt a sense of purpose, a deep satisfaction in the life we were building together. Min would call every night, his voice a warm comfort traveling across the miles. He would ask about my day, about the children's adventures, and tell me he missed us. I knew he worked hard for our family, and I worked hard to keep our home a place of peace and love. Our life was not grand, but it was full of small joys. I would watch our children sleep, their faces so innocent in the moonlight, and my heart would swell with a gratitude so deep it felt like a prayer. This was my life, and it was a good life. Our friends would sometimes ask if it was difficult, with Min gone so much. They would wonder how I managed it all on my own. I would just smile and shake my head. It was not a burden, it was a partnership. We were a team, even when we were apart. I knew his absence was temporary, and his return was always something to look forward to. I found strength in our shared dreams. In the future we were carefully crafting, brick by brick. Every day was a step toward that future, a future where he would travel less and our family would be whole all the time. I held on to that promise like a precious stone. The routine became a comforting blanket around me. The smell of coffee in the morning, the sound of the children's feet running down the stairs, the quiet hum of the house after they were tucked into bed. These were the threads that wove the fabric of my contentment. I found happiness in the predictability, in knowing that each day held its own small blessings. My world was orderly, safe, and filled with a love that I believed was as strong and steady as the mountains. I had everything a woman could ever want: a loving husband, healthy children, and a home filled with peace. I felt truly deeply blessed by the heavens. When Min came home, it was like the sun breaking through the clouds after a long rain. The house would instantly feel warmer, brighter, more alive. He would drop his bags at the door and scoop the children into his arms, their squeals of delight echoing through the rooms. He never came home empty-handed, always bringing small gifts and sweets from his travels. For me, he would bring a simple flower or a new book he thought I would enjoy. His presence filled every corner of our home, chasing away the shadows of his absence. He was not just a visitor in our lives, he was its very heart, the center around which we all orbited with joy. He never expected me to do everything alone when he was back. He would wake up with me in the early hours, making breakfast for the children so I could have a few extra moments of rest. He would help with the laundry, folding clothes while we talked about our weeks apart. He would fix the leaky faucet in the kitchen or mend a broken toy, his hands gentle and capable. He knew how tired I could get, and he made it his mission to lighten my load. He would take the children to the park on Saturday afternoons, giving me precious hours of silence to read or simply sit in the garden and breathe. We were careful with our money, saving every penny we could. Min's travel was expensive, but his salary was good. We put money aside for the children's education and for our own future. But we were not afraid to enjoy small luxuries. Sometimes, on a Sunday, Min would surprise us by taking us out to a restaurant for pho, a special treat that made the children's eyes shine. We would sit together, slurping our noodles, a happy family unit. These moments were diamonds. They were proof that our hard work and sacrifices were worth it. Our life felt secure, stable, and full of promise. My heart was so full of gratitude for him, for the life we had built. I would watch him reading a story to An and Bin, his voice calm and soothing, and I would think to myself that I was the luckiest woman in the world. He was a good man, a wonderful husband, and an incredible father. He understood me without me having to say a word. He supported my dreams and celebrated my small victories. Our love felt like a sturdy, ancient tree, its roots running deep into the earth, unshakable and strong. I trusted him completely with my heart, my children, and my future. The night it all changed began like any other. It was a Thursday. Min had been home for a week, and the house was settled back into its happy rhythm. We had eaten dinner together, the children telling their father all about their school day. Later, after they were asleep, Min and I sat on the sofa, my head resting on his shoulder. We didn't talk much, we just enjoyed the quiet comfort of being together. The air was still and warm, filled with the familiar scent of night-blooming jasmine from our garden. I felt a profound sense of peace, a deep contentment that wrapped around me like a soft blanket. I drifted off to sleep there, in his arms, feeling safe and loved. Sometime deep in the night, a small cry woke me. It was Bin, our youngest. He must have had a bad dream. I started to get up, my body heavy with sleep, but Min was already moving. "I'll go," he whispered, his voice thick with slumber. "You rest." I heard his footsteps pad softly down the hallway toward the children's room. I listened for a moment, hearing the low murmur of his voice as he comforted our son. The crying stopped. A wave of love washed over me. He was such a good father. I closed my eyes, smiling to myself, and let the tide of sleep pull me back under. I woke again later, I did not know why. The house was silent, a heavy, deep silence that felt different from before. I reached out for Min, but the space beside me in the bed was empty and cold. I sat up, my heart starting to beat a little faster. The digital clock on the bedside table glowed in the darkness. 3:17 a.m. A cool wind whispered through the open window, making the curtains dance like ghosts. I listened, straining to hear any sound, but there was nothing. Not the creak of the floorboards, not the soft hum of the refrigerator, just a strange, hollow emptiness. He should have been back in bed by now. A feeling of unease began to creep into my soul. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet cold against the wooden floor. I walked to the children's room and peeked inside. Anne and Bin were both fast asleep, their breathing soft and even. Bin was tucked tightly under his blanket, a small, peaceful smile on his face. Min was not there. I checked the bathroom, the living room. The lights were all off. The front door was locked. A knot of confusion tightened in my stomach. Where could he be? Perhaps he had gone to the kitchen for a glass of water and had fallen asleep in the chair. It was a strange thought, but I clung to it. I walked quietly toward the kitchen, my steps making no sound on the cool tile floor. As I got closer, I saw a sliver of light from under the door of the small spare room at the back of the house, the one we used for storage and sometimes as a guest room when my mother visited. My confusion deepened. Why would he be in there? I pushed the door open gently, a question forming on my lips, and then I saw them. The world stopped. The air left my lungs. My heart, which had been beating with confusion, now felt like it had been pierced by a shard of ice. It stopped beating altogether for a moment. He was there. And he was not alone. A woman I had never seen before was with him. They were standing close, their faces illuminated by the dim light of a single lamp. I did not scream. I did not cry. I could not move. I just stood in the doorway, a silent statue of disbelief. The scene before me did not make sense. It was like watching a movie about someone else's life, a terrible, tragic story that could not possibly be my own. This was my home. This was my husband. This was the man who held my hand and promised me forever. My mind could not connect the man I loved with the man I saw in that room. He turned and saw me then. His eyes widened with a look of pure shock, then something else, guilt, fear. The woman beside him looked away, her face hidden in the shadows. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the frantic, painful hammering of my own heart, which had suddenly started beating again, too fast, too hard. "Leon," he said, my name a choked whisper in the stillness. It was a name he had spoken with love 1,000 times, but now it sounded like the name of a stranger. I could not speak. I could not breathe. My perfect life, my beautiful, carefully built world, had just shattered into a million tiny pieces. I backed away from the door, my legs trembling. I turned and walked back through the dark, silent house, feeling my way like a blind person. The future I had believed in, the love I had trusted, the man I thought I knew, it was all a lie. A cold, sharp pain spread through my chest, a physical ache of heartbreak that was so intense I thought I might die from it. I sat on the edge of our bed, the bed where he was supposed to be, and stared into the darkness. The questions swirled in my head, a storm of confusion and pain. Who was she? How long? Why? The sun would rise in a few hours, but I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that my world would never see the light again.